I, 21 female, found out the actual reason my mom, 48 female, lost custody of me, and I don't know if I can ever look at her again. I was taken out of my mother's care by the authorities when I was 11 because of sexual assault allegations against my stepfather. He was convicted, but he took a plea deal, so he was released by the time I turned 13. Honestly, from what I remember, I do not even think he served the full 2 years. I was his primary victim. I cannot remember exactly how old I was when it all started, but the earliest crime he admitted to happened when I was 8. I have no idea if my mom knew about it before the authorities got involved, or if she found out afterward. Looking back, I feel like it would not have mattered to her either way. After being placed in temporary state custody while the legal issues were sorted out, I eventually went to live with a relative and her husband. They later adopted me when it became clear my mother was not going to get me back. My adoptive parents were incredible. They put me in therapy, got me the help I needed, and did everything they could to make me feel safe again. One thing they never stopped me from doing was keeping in contact with my mother. I could call or text her whenever I wanted, and she was allowed to visit me, though I was never allowed to visit her. As a kid, I just assumed that was some court rule and did not question it. Growing up, I thought the reason my mom lost custody was neglect. I believed the court held her responsible for leaving me alone with that man so often, or for not realizing something was wrong until someone else noticed I was physically abused. My adoptive parents never corrected these assumptions. They always told me they would support my relationship with my mom if that was what I wanted. When I turned 18, my mom and I started talking more frequently, though we still did not see each other much in person. At first, I did not think much of it, but as the years passed, I started questioning the circumstances of my removal and adoption. I could not understand how a woman with no prior legal issues could lose her child so easily. Eventually, I decided to ask my adoptive parents about it. They were gentle and explained the truth. My mom had been given a choice. To regain custody of me, her husband would have to leave the home and stay away from me completely. She refused to meet those conditions, and because of that, I was adopted by my relatives. When I finally worked up the courage to ask my mom if this was true, she did not deny it. She told me she loved him and said he was a good man who made a mistake. She admitted that she had been told she could either keep her daughter or stay with her husband. In the end, she chose him over me. I cannot even describe what I am feeling right now. Honestly, I feel sick every time I think about it. She was my mother, and she knew exactly what he had done. He was convicted of sexually assaulting her 11-year-old child, yet she refused to leave him. For the past 12 years, she has willingly shared a bed with the man who took from me. She has chosen to stay married to the man who hurt me. My adoptive parents explained that a therapist advised them to let me figure things out on my own when the time came. While my mother did choose her husband over me, she was still allowed to communicate with me as long as my abuser was not physically near me. The therapist believed that cutting off all contact with my mom would have been more harmful in the long run. But honestly, none of this makes me feel any better. The past 2 days have been like a nightmare. I cannot understand how she could stay with him. I do not know why she would choose someone like that over her own child. I am also struggling to understand why my adoptive parents did not tell me the truth sooner. To be honest, I cannot make sense of their reasoning either. My mom has been texting me, but I cannot bring myself to respond. Every time I think about her, I feel either nauseous or furious. My adoptive parents have been checking in on me, and I have been answering their calls because I do not want them to worry enough to drive over here. Beyond that, though, I feel completely lost. Honestly, I have no idea what to do anymore. Update 1. I had a therapy session earlier this week, and I was able to bring up this revelation with my therapist. We are going to work on ways to help me process everything. Honestly, it is going to take time, but I am hopeful that eventually I will find a way to live with it. Right now, I still do not really know how to unpack all the feelings I have about this. I do understand why my adoptive parents handled things the way they did. In that moment, being hit with that information was a lot to deal with, and I felt betrayed. It was not necessarily by them, but I think I directed some of those feelings toward them unfairly. That was not really fair to them, and I tried to apologize, but they told me there was nothing to be sorry for. They understand how difficult this is for me, and they said they had been expecting the reaction I had. My adoptive mom even said that if she were in my shoes, she would have felt upset too, even if those feelings were not entirely aimed at the right people. I talked to them about how I felt and asked if they could explain a little more about why they decided to approach things the way they did. They said that when they got custody of me and saw how the trauma from my earlier childhood had affected me, they wanted to do everything they could to make sure I grew up feeling cared for and as well adjusted as possible. When the therapist advised them not to tell me the truth or challenge my belief that I was removed from my mom because of neglect, they followed that advice. Both the therapist and my adoptive parents believed it would be better for me to come to terms with my mother's choice on my own. They explained that I had already been let down by so many adults who were supposed to protect me, and they did not want to add themselves to that list. My adoptive dad also mentioned that they wanted me to be able to enjoy at least part of my childhood without a revelation like that weighing on me. Looking back, I really appreciate that. I do not remember much of my life before I went to live with them, and what I do remember is not good. But the childhood they gave me made up for so much of what I lost. I know that every decision my adoptive parents made for me was out of love and with my best interests in mind. I love them, and I am grateful for everything they did to give me the life I have now. As for my mother, I told her I was no longer interested in speaking to her, given everything I now know. I am not sure how she took it because I blocked her number afterward. My parents agreed to reiterate that message if she contacts them, though I do not think she will. For now, I plan to never reach out to her again. Honestly, I think part of me will always wonder why she made the choices she did. But based on the answers she has given me so far, I do not think her honesty would do much to help me in the long run. I guess I'll have to live with this for now.